This call is being recorded.
Welcome to Your Daily Writing Habit. If you are writing a book or thinking about it, or maybe you started writing a book but you need some help getting it done, you are in the right place. Good morning, everyone. I'm your host, Christine Whitmarsh. If you're looking for me online, look for Christine Inc., I-N-K, like that stuff we write with. Each day, I'm sharing with you the writing habits I've learned over my 21 years as a ghostwriter, book coach, and author. I have found that three things in particular have a huge impact on your success as an author, and they can even turn someone who barely sees themselves as a writer into a published book author. Those three things are writing fundamentals, productivity, and mindset habits. And here today on Your Daily Writing Habit, I'm so excited to welcome back to the show for a repeat performance, attorney Kathryn Goldman from Creative Law Center, for a highly anticipated conversation about authors and artificial intelligence, AI, especially in terms of potential copyright and trademark issues, what we need to know to protect ourselves. So here's a little bit about Kathryn. Kathryn Goldman is an intellectual property and internet law attorney who helps creative professionals protect their work so they can profit from it. She has helped countless writers, artists, and creative entrepreneurs move from early stage ideas to licensing their work or optioning their books and building their businesses. She is the editor of the website Creative Law Center. The Creative Law Center gives innovative creatives the business and legal perspective they need when making the move from artist to entrepreneur with understandable and actionable information. Welcome back to the show, Kathryn.
Thank you, Christine. It's lovely to be here again.
Yeah. And how's your 2023 going so far?
It's going really well. I'm so excited that 2022 is finished. Moving forward, 2023, it's going to be a very good year.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. And all kinds of interesting things already. My goodness, not even 1 month in, and all kinds of issues that I would imagine you're delving into. I can't even imagine, based on just my curiosity about potential intellectual property issues with artists and writers and AI algorithms that are, I guess the phrase is, scraping the internet, and they're collecting images and words and making them into new things. And if I'm this curious, I can't imagine your world now. So when did this subject matter first hit your professional radar?
Well, it's been around the periphery. So last year I was really learning about blockchain and NFTs, and I was really digging into that because I loved the notion with NFTs that artists could get a royalty on the resale of their work after it was out of their possession. So I really thought that was an exciting concept that had been around for a while, and it was coming into play with NFTs and blockchain. So that's what I focused on last year. So then I guess about the end of the year, we had the launch of Stable Diffusion, and Microsoft launched their text-to-image generator. And then we had, Chat GPT came on, I don't know, past month or two or something. And it just cranked up, and I just okay, now I got to jump on and see what these things are all about, and try to figure out what's going on, where it's going, and what are the promises and what are the risks of this new technology.
Absolutely. And so, let's make the distinction based on my understanding of the scraping, how AIs are interacting with artists' work on the internet. What is your technical understanding of how AIs are interacting, whether with visual art or with words from authors, just, with our work? How are they interacting with that?
Okay, so the way let's talk about the images first. So what I understand is that there is this organization that has created data sets, right, of images, and these data sets are created and then used by these AI text-to-image generators. Okay, so this data set, one of which is, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pronounce it properly, but it's LAION the company or the organization that's based in Germany that has done the, and I'm using air quotes here, web scraping. Okay, so that they are the creators of the data sets, and so then these AI machines go and train on those data sets. Okay, and so what they're doing is they're studying, and these data sets, when they've scraped the images, they've scraped also the captions for the images, the alt text for the images, maybe some surrounding HTML code if there was anything useful there. And what I don't know is if they actually scraped the metadata off the images. So the scraping data set has been created by this organization in Germany. Now, I've looked at where they've gotten their images. There was a study done of a subset of images, about 12 million of the images, and we're talking like 500 million or billion, a lot of images. But these guys did a study of a subset, and they found that most of the images in their 12 million image subset had come from Pinterest. And Pinterest, if I understand correctly, strips all the metadata off of the image when it's uploaded to its site. But other, like stock photo places, they keep the metadata. When I say metadata, do you understand what I'm talking about? For an image?
Yeah,
well, it's like tags. They're like tags on the images, right? So if you're on a stock photo site and you're looking for an image to illustrate a blog post, and you want a typewriter or a laptop on a desktop or something like that, and then you would search for laptop, desktop, and then it would feed you up a bunch of images of a laptop, because in the metadata for those images, in the tags, they have the word laptop. So anyway, this data set collects all these images and collects all of the words that are surrounding the image: caption, name, alt text, tags, all those things. So that when the AI machine trains on it, it is making a relationship between the text, the word, and the image that it's attached to. Okay, so that's very simplistic. But basically then, when you go into to Stable Diffusion and you type, I don't know, generate a picture of a cat, a gray cat walking down a pathway. So it goes and finds the images or the portions of the images that have cat in it, right? And it can start constructing an image based on that text prompt. So now let's get back to the scraping. I know there's so much stuff here.
I know. I've been so excited about this phone call. Go ahead.
So the scraping is done by the holders of the data set, that LAION, L-A-I-O-N. And I am not clear that Stability Diffusion, for example, if we can use them, Stable Diffusion, if we can use that as the target here, I'm not sure that they participated in any of the scraping. Okay, so when we go in and type a text prompt to Stable Diffusion, I don't think they did the scraping. I think the scraping was done by this company over in Germany. I don't know whether when Stable Diffusion trained on the data set, the LAION data set, I don't know whether they actually copied the images, right? So LAION does the scraping, Stable Diffusion goes into the data set, is trained on the data set, and it memorizes. And that is the word that these engineers are using. By training on the data set, the AI machine is memorizing the images. and the relationship between the words and the images. But I don't know that they are actually keeping a copy themselves, right? So that kind of gives you a separation, a layer of separation between where the data set is and the AI machine that is trained on the data set. And so the reason this is interesting to me is because if you want to prove copyright infringement, there are two ways to do it, basically. And one is direct copying, okay? And the other is through what's called access and substantial similarity. I saw your work because, I bought a copy of it. I bought it and then I copied it. So I had access to it, and then what I turned out is substantially similar to yours. That's one way to prove copyright infringement. The other way is to prove direct copying, and that's where all this web scraping comes in. That would be considered direct copying, but I don't know that Stable Diffusion did it. So that's, and I'm talking about the one lawsuit that was filed by the three artists a couple weeks ago against Stable Diffusion and Midjourney and DeviantArt. So don't know that they actually copied it, that Stable Diffusion actually copied it, and I don't know if the training that the AI machine did, the memorization of those images, is going to constitute copying under copyright law. That's the edge.
Yes, and I mean, new technology, old laws. I mean, I would imagine you've probably bumped up against this a few times in the cycles of innovation.
Well, once or twice. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this since the 80s, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm saying. Yeah, and that seems to be the challenge. New innovation, old laws, how do they go together? I mean, I would just immediately in my head just now thought about when Congress brought Facebook and Twitter and all the social media companies in front of them, and they were, I think, were they using like the old anti-monopoly laws as their grounds for bringing the social media companies? It just occurred to me.
Yeah, they've been, those social media companies have been in front of Congress so many times. I'm not exactly sure.
I think they were going with anti-monopoly, or antitrust the first time.
Antitrust, yeah, that's entirely possible. But now, of course, the issue is privacy. But the horse has left the barn.
They've just redefined it, so it doesn't apply to the old privacy law. So anyway, I digress. I just thought about that. And then I think I saw, regarding our topic at hand, wasn't there a lawsuit recently from Getty Images? I'm not sure, was that against the company in Germany or the company Stable Diffusion?
Okay, so Getty has sued. Stability is the owner of Stable Diffusion, and Getty has sued Stability in the UK. And that just happened last week. I have not been able to put my fingers on a copy of that complaint, but apparently there have been images generated that are from Stable Diffusion that show the Getty trademark on the images.
Saw that, yeah.
Yeah, so Getty, I mean, this is could potentially be an existential threat to Getty, to photographers, to artists, to writers. And I say potentially because now I've only played with this a little bit, and there may be people out there who are really good at developing the proper prompts or fine tuning the data set and training the AI machines a little bit better. But what's coming out of these AI machines is not high quality as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
The images are kind of goofy, and the text is not wonderful. I mean, it requires heavy editing. Have you played with it at all?
I have a little, and yeah, my impression is exactly what it is. It's something that's creating elements, as you were just saying. It's grabbing elements of things, memorizing them, but of course it's not a human being, so it's not like an artist creating something with a vision and an intention and a purpose where everything goes together. The AI doesn't have an ability to have a vision of how all these things go together. I think that's why they look rather disjointed to me.
Right. It can, because it's training on an existing material, it can't really create, right? It doesn't have vision and intention and creativity. It doesn't at this point, and the stuff that it's spewing out now is not wonderful. So it's not there yet, but the technology's here to stay, and it's going to get better. And
They're like crazy, yeah.
yeah, I mean, these engineers, they are like a dog on a bone, man. They want it. They are not going to let it go. They want it to be perfect, and they are not necessarily thinking about the legal considerations or the ethical considerations. All they're thinking about is what's practical, what can I do, right? What's a good use case for this technology? They just want to make it better and better and better. So it's here. So we're going to have to deal with it. And it could, at some point, could it learn to be creative? Can AI learn to be creative? I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, because then that goes into a massively philosophical discussion about what is creativity and how, I mean, that could take us days to hash through that. So
right, but that's the one thing that it doesn't have now. It can only give you what it has seen, and it can only spit back out at you relationships that have already been made between text and image or between text and text. I mean, so the ChatGPT is based on a technology that I think is called next word technology, right? And so they trained on billions and billions of essays and stories and articles and posts and just everything they could get their hands on, and they analyze what is the word that's going to come after, say, cloud-based. Okay, when the word cloud-based is used, what usually comes after it? Oh, I don't know, servers or data or files, right? And so when you type a prompt in cloud-based, it will go and say, okay, well, what is that word related to? And I'm going to spit back the relationship that's in the AI machine. So it only can give you back what it has already seen at this point.
I mean, just for lack of a better phrase, it's constructing, not creating.
Yeah, I like that. Yes. It's got its building blocks, and the building blocks are all the things that are in the data set that have, come off the web, that were created by millions of people. It's got those building blocks, and it's constructing something based on what it knows, what it's already seen.
Now, the issues, in the headlines, just like what you talked about, is it's constructing things with other people's potential intellectual property. And you discussed, there's like the ambiguity and just really like the vagueness of the copyright laws in regards to images. Do I dare even ask how on earth, if at all, this translates to existing manuscripts by authors?
So you have the two ways of proving copyright infringement, right? We have the direct copying, and then we have substantial similarity. Okay? And so what you have to do is you have to take the two works, the original protected work and then the infringing copy, and you have to put them side by side. And you have to make a list of all of the comparisons. And then you have all the similarities, right? A side by side list of all of the similarities in the two works. And then what you have to do is you have to filter out the kinds of similarities that are not protected by copyright. And the things that aren't protected by copyright for nonfiction writers are facts, right? Facts are not protected. Anybody gets to use facts. It's the expression and how you phrase that fact that's protected, but not the fact itself. So if you're doing a side-by-side comparison of two nonfiction works, you list the similarities, you eliminate all of the facts, and if there are enough similarities left, then you can go to the next step, which is it substantially similar? Did the infringing work appropriate protected material from the original work? So that's how that would go. Then there's the direct copying piece. If you've got an identical manuscript, that's going to be easier. But it's this collage thing that they're doing, right? They're taking a little bit from here and a little bit from there and a little bit from here, and there's no evidence yet that I've seen, or I don't understand the technology well enough to know whether they are actually storing all of these manuscripts in their systems. If they're doing that, then there might be an issue. But if they're not doing that, then it's going to be a difficult case to prove.
They're making themselves legal proof. And it seems like they're avoiding what you said, substantial, and I'm not sure what the metrics on substantial are, but if they're just doing a little bit here, a little bit there, it seems like they're skirting under the bar of substantial if they're doing it that way.
That's exactly right. And in fact, the case that was filed in California, the three artists whose work was in the training data set, they are not using substantial similarity at all to try and prove infringement. They're using direct copying to prove infringement. Now let's talk about a little minute about the Getty case in the UK. And so the question is, why did they sue in the UK? Well, I think Stability is maybe a UK company, but also there's a difference in the law between the UK and the US on the issue of fair use. And fair use, which has another phrase in the UK, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's more narrow. It's harder to find fair use under UK law than it is under US law. So that might be one reason why they sued in the UK, because they want to narrow the defense for the AI machine.
And another thought, I know we're jumping all over the place, but a minute ago when you were talking about the side-by-side comparison to find out, if it's substantial use, how funny that an AI would be a perfect thing to use for that task, to do the comparison to see what the AI did.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, do we want to do this ourselves? No. Let's have an AI look for what AI did to itself.
Right. You can just feed it in there and say, yeah, exactly. That is a good use case.
That's really funny. Oh my gosh. I know this is fascinating to me. I've done, I've accidentally started doing an AI and authors series here on the show, and I think I'm on part 5, and I was just planning on doing one episode, and now all of a sudden every Tuesdays I've been talking about AI and authors because I think of a different angle every week.
Well, that's interesting because in the membership over at the Creative Law Center, I was talking about this month, the workshop was on copyright infringement and substantial similarity, right? So how do you prove it? If somebody has knocked off your work, what evidence do you need to prove that? And then this lawsuit landed, and next month is the full-blown AI workshop. So it just keeps going, and I've got a couple of blog posts coming out because we've got to get to the bottom of this, and we have to figure out whose livelihoods are truly at risk here. Because there are people who are going to lose their careers over this eventually. I think, though, before artists, it's going to be computer programmers. Because we
think of throughout history, with every new way, every cycle, throughout history, every new innovation cycle has led to job losses in certain sectors. It just depends. I mean, this has gone back to, the, who was it, the cobblers that were shoeing horses. Well, they
Right,
were out of work
exactly. The
when
blacksmith.
Yep.
Yep.
Blacksmith. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And, when was the last time you had a letter, when somebody wrote you a letter and mailed it to you? It's all email, right? So, I mean, I know the post office has other things to do, but there are just a lot of technology changes our livelihood. There's no doubt about it.
And then there's some professions, and I like to think this is about authors because we are far from, I think, AIs being creative or having imagination. There's a lot of human elements where I just don't know how they'll be able to replicate. Of course, I probably lack the imagination of the people working at these AI companies. But I was thinking about how, the orators way back in the ancient times, they must not have been too thrilled with Gutenberg's printing press when it came along. But there's still people that give speeches, so there's ways to adapt. Not everybody's out of work.
Right. Well, I think when the printing press came along, maybe some of those monks lost their jobs.
That's true. The people that were, the transcription services, but then you look, I mean, it's kind of fun. This conversation's going, I knew it was going to go everywhere. So it's kind of funny because the transcription service that I use is AI. It's an AI-based service. But before that, I was using human transcriptionists for years. And as far as I know, there are still human transcriptionists out there. So it's very interesting how some stick around, some have to adapt, and some disappear.
Right. And it took a long time for those AI transcription services to become any good. Right? Yeah, I mean, you remember back when they first started coming out, or the dictation to text software. I mean, they were terrible. But now you train them and boom, they're almost flawless.
They are. The transcripts, I get it, and they're in like less than 10 minutes. So it depends is the big answer. And then another question on behalf of authors. Now, especially in light of the conversation about the ambiguity of copyright law, do we have to do anything differently to protect ourselves, or the same rules still apply? It's just going to be up to the powers that be to interpret those rules, but we're still basically protecting our work the same way?
So, yes, we're going to have to wait and see what they say about the copyright piece and, where that's going. And, of course, there's a big fair use case in front of the Supreme Court now, the Goldsmith versus Warhol case. So fair use is going to come under scrutiny. So we do definitely have to keep an eye on that. Copyright your work. Other things that you can do if you still have to sell your work on platforms you don't control. And that's an issue. If you are selling things on your own platform, on your own website, then of course you can put in the terms of service that if they violate, if they copy, if they misuse, then they're subject to jurisdiction in your state, and they could be subject to a claim for breach of contract, right? So you can, but that's only going to be useful on your own platform. When you put things on Amazon, now I don't know, can they scrape Amazon? I don't know the answer to that.
Great question, because I hear about manuscripts being stolen, not scraped, but just outright stolen and repackaged. But those are by human thieves, as far as I understand.
Right. I mean, I've heard of people who have uploaded their manuscripts to websites where they thought they were going to be reviewed by prospective agents, or they were trying to hire an editor and it was a fake site, it was a phishing site, and the manuscript has been stolen. But those are human evil deed doers, not AI evil deed doers.
I know. Now we need double the amount of evil deed doers now. That's exactly what we needed as creatives, right?
Exactly.
I have a couple more questions from Kim in my Inc.
Sure.
Authors group on Facebook, and she has questions really from the user standpoint. And her first question is, what type of disclosures does an author need to post on a blog or email that is written by an AI?
Well, that is going to be, it seems to me, an ethical question and not a legal question, unless you are submitting a manuscript for a contest or you are submitting to an agent or a publisher and you're representing that it's your work and it's not your work. I think you have an obligation to disclose. I think if you represent to a publisher that it's your work and it isn't, that you will have violated a term, one of the warranties in a publishing contract. I think you have to do it in that context. But if you're talking about a blog post, you're talking about the trust of your readers, of your audience, right? And so how do you want to handle that trust, right? With kid gloves. So you want to be sure that they understand where you're coming from. Now, are people writing blog posts wholesale using AI without even massaging them?
Great question. I mean, if I had to guess, based on the excitement over ChatGPT now and how quickly it's growing, so obviously it is being fed, and I do see people kind of alluding to this, especially in like the sales copy world and emails and social media posts especially. I mean, if just taking a shot in the dark without any objective evidence at all, I think maybe they are.
Yeah. For sales pages and sales emails, I don't think you have an obligation to say that it was AI assisted. I do think that if you're writing an opinion piece, if you're writing, I think if you are representing that it's coming from you and it's not coming from you and you're found out, I think you will have undermined the loyalty of your audience. But for sales pieces and marketing pieces, I mean, we already don't trust marketers. And I know, and I do my own marketing, right? But we already look. Right, exactly.
Even an entrepreneur is a marketer. But I like your answer here. It's really the distinction, not a legal distinction, like you said, but an ethical distinction that really is grounded in your relationship and trust that you want to have with your audience. So I think that's a great answer.
Good.
And she had another question. It's kind of like a four-parter, I think. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
How does copyright work on something AI generated if the computer writes it for me? She puts me in quotes. Is it mine? What's to prevent the computer from writing the same copy for a competitor? And do either of us have any recourse?
Okay, that's a great question. And the answer to the first part is that at the moment, the Copyright Office is not accepting AI-generated work, period. AI-generated work is not subject to copyright protection in the United States at the moment. There is one case pending, I think it's in D.C., where this guy has been challenging that notion all over the world, and he's gotten one positive outcome so far in South Africa. The court in South Africa has determined that he can be the owner of AI-generated material. So, but right now, the Copyright Office is saying no. And what happened is somebody filed an application for copyright protection on an AI-generated image, and the Copyright Office issued the registration and then came back and said, oh, second thoughts, we're not doing it. No AI stuff is protected by copyright. So that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, can that AI machine generate the same copy for someone else? And I would say, yeah, I think that it could do that, depending on the prompts that it's given and how, close they are. Um, I, in my looking at this issue, I believe that it's very difficult to reproduce the same outcome twice because the data set that they've trained on is so huge. But again, I've only played with it a little bit, so I don't know the answer. But it could be. It could be something identical for your competitor, and then Google SEO is not going to love it.
Yeah, I was thinking that. And I mean, you make a great point that because everybody is putting, differently worded queries, we can assume, into something like ChatGPT. It's, yeah, I just think, statistically speaking, it seems highly unlikely that it would kick out, like if, Kim, who is asking this question, and, she's doing a sales page using AI, and, she asks it a certain way and kicks out a sales page, and her competitor somewhere across the country that offers services that she does, maybe a few sentences would be the same, but like you said about Google SEO, wouldn't that be interesting if you're searching for, a specific phrase? But see, do people even search like a specific phrase that, for instance, for Kim, like a self-publishing company would use to describe themselves? And then what if 3 different self-publishing companies come up? I think I'm with you. Statistically, it seems highly unlikely, like you said, because of just how large the data sets are.
Mhm. So I tried not Chat GPT, but I tried another one. I couldn't get on Chat GPT for the longest time. Oh, we're too busy. But I tried this other one, and I didn't play with it for very long because I had to pay for it, and I got like a 5-day free trial, and I'll be damned if I was going to pay $1,000 for it. So, and I tried to get a sales page generated for last month's workshop. I wanted to see what it would look like. Could I actually get a sales page that was, remotely usable? And the answer was, for me, I couldn't, because, I'm talking about proving copyright and comparing 2 works to show substantial similarity. And it just did not have 2 things. It didn't have the level of sophistication in the output to make compelling copy, right? Just didn't know what it was talking about, basically. And secondly, it wasn't my voice. I tend to be very chatty, and I have parentheticals, and that's how I write, and I could not make it sound like me. So I didn't find it very useful.
Like we said, this is where it is now. Where it's going to be in a few years, we don't know. I mean, it's going to have to turn itself into a ghostwriter, which I know personally, it's incredibly difficult to get the way that somebody speaks. Everybody has a unique style of communication, and I've seen people kind of post their before and after, like they write their bio and then they have the AI write the bio. And from what I've seen, the AI, it really kind of like sucks out their personality. All of a sudden, it just sounds like the same jargony things that we've seen in business bios throughout the history of time. And like, yeah, there's a million bios that say, oh, he's on the cutting edge of the things and the stuff, and jargon. I think, well, yeah, your personality was just removed from that bio. It might sound really smooth and really great to you, but it doesn't sound like you.
Well, that's, and that's true. That jargon. That's right. It's like this recessive feedback loop. It's over and over and over again. And then the more people that write like that, the more it's going to give. I mean, it's just the whole notion of it.
Yeah, we're inundating the data set. Yeah, we're inundating the data set with jargon. Of course, that's what it's going to give us.
Exactly. And the reduction, talk about not creativity, just the reduction in thought, the reduction in words, creative expression. So, yeah.
That's a long way to go, but as I've been saying on my series, this is the time where it's not the time to turn a blind eye to it. It's also not the time to just blindly reject it as artists and say, oh no, this is either this isn't going to last or I just hate it. I'm going to be anti-AI. It's not time for any of the extremes. It's time to, at least figure out what we're dealing with because, as we talked about today, the cycles of innovation, they've existed forever. And when we ignore them, all of a sudden you find yourself playing catch up. So certainly something worth looking into. And that's been really kind of like the moral of my series so far.
Right. And it's a tool, right? So we all have our jobs, and this is a new tool that's on the horizon. It's like when the telephone came out, So how can we use this tool in our in our creative workflow, in our job? It is a tool. What tasks can we, foist off onto this tool while at the same time retaining our creativity and inquisitiveness and innovation in our own work? So you take those repetitive tasks, you foist it off onto the AI, and then you spend time on the creative work.
And I'm glad you used that word, tool. I've used that I'm pretty sure every iteration of AI and authors, because I'm reminding people of that, because I think it's easy, because I think it's obviously the most sophisticated tool in our lifetime so far. And I think people forget, yes, tool, like a microwave oven, and a vacuum cleaner, and all these tools that were, introduced to humanity. They literally are tools, but AIs are just really the most complex, the most complicated, like we've discussed today. Just there's so many question marks around them, and people forget where it's like, oh, at the end of the day, it's a tool meant to complement our productivity and, not to replace us. But there's, I think because of there's so much like media speculation, and there's so many conversations and hype and excitement and emotions and everything, that people do forget that, at the end of the day, it is a tool.
Right, and that's exactly what the media does. The headlines are all illustrators are going to lose their jobs, and all computer programmers are going to lose their jobs, and I mean, and that is hype. That's all clickbait. Okay, that is not where we are right now. The kind of stuff that AI is doing, for instance, in manufacturing, and if the manufacturing facility is using AI to inspect the quality of the manufactured good as it comes off the line. All right, that's replacing, a quality assurance supervisor or person. So AI is doing that. So there are these use cases where it does make sense. But mostly the media is overhyping it in order to get people to fuss and click and all that kind of stuff.
To click, because that's their job.
Right.
But it is so interesting, because I just had a thought about, it's the creativity and the point of view, and we still have all of that. So in terms of replacing writers, well, I mean, to be blunt, if you're a writer or copywriter or ghostwriter, whatever, and you're literally just putting words into sentences that have subjects and predicates in conjunction, and they communicate information, you might be at risk. If that's all you're doing, if there's no point of view, if there's no creativity, but really point of view is huge in this. If there's no reflection of the human experience, if you don't have anything more to say than putting words into sentences, I don't know. You tell me if you agree with me or not, Kathryn, but that seems, a little bit on the edge.
I agree with you. I mean, that's not the kind of work I want to read.
Yeah.
I want something. I want something with some kick to it, man. I want something with some. Give me a viewpoint. Give me something to think about. Don't give me something that is regurgitated, part of this and part of that and part of this, because then this word suggests that this should be the next word and this should be the next word. No, think these things. Think them, write them down. There are just. I mean, I am reading right now Barbara Kingsolver's new book. Demon Copperhead. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
many books. Beautiful amount of books out there.
Pardon?
There's a beautiful number of books out there, but yes, go on.
Yeah, no, and so it's like I'm reading along and I get to this phrase and I'm like, oh my God, that is just a great sentence. I mean, there's art, there's beauty, that's what a writer does. And I think that AI is not going to be writing those kinds of sentences too soon.
Because they come from living a human life. And that's something that, as far as I know, I mean, I hesitate to make any predictions about technology because I'd normally be wrong, but I don't know how they can teach an AI what it is like to be a human being and live in a human life. Because to get the things that we're talking about here, a point of view and values and insights and style, and to be able to capture the emotions and depth of the human experience, it's like, how do you capture that through predictive words? I don't think that can happen right now. I don't know how they're going to teach an AI what it is to be a human being. I think that's what that larger question comes down to.
I think that's right. And I started with, they can't teach creativity, or they haven't yet taught creativity. And that's just a smaller subset of the human experience. So I think you're exactly correct on that. Right now, it's not there. But my goodness.
It'd be quite a leap for it to get there, because again, we're trying to tell an AI what it is to be a human being. That's a huge, huge leap.
Yeah, and so then they're going to be doing these interviews, right? So this is a random thought that just while you were talking about teaching AI to be a human being. So we have that group of that whole collection of interviews that at the Library of Congress, and I can't remember what it's called, but people went down there and interviewed each other. Little family members went down and talked to each other, and they're all recorded, and they're all public domain. And that is potentially a data set for learning the human condition.
And even then, they can learn, and it's so interesting you say this because I'm in grad school now for a quantitative psychology degree, but the track I'm on is qualitative, and what you're describing is qualitative research. And even then, we can teach, it can read all of, listen to all of those stories, and it can an AI would be able to report, almost like being the researcher in the situation. It's able to report what it is to live that human being's life, but there's still never, an AI can't understand what it is to live that human being's life. They can listen to those stories all day and all night, but they'll be able to say, this is what it is, to be an immigrant coming to America, but will they really know what it is? No, they won't. They can report on other people's experiences of what it is to be an immigrant in America.
Oh my goodness, it's going to be, we are on a wild ride. You know that, Kathryn?
We really are. So it's all fascinating, and this was so great, Kathryn, and I love that we just, for the last part of the interview here, we just went into all kinds of philosophical and ethical implications. And this is the kind of stuff I love to talk about. So, and thank you, of course, for the breadth of legal knowledge that you always bring to the conversation here. This is awesome, and loved the information today.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I know we could probably go for another hour, but maybe we should give it a rest and revisit sometime later in the year. Maybe we'll get some court decisions, and we'll have something.
Absolutely. I'd love to have you back, and I'm sure my AI and author series will be at part 25 by then, or the rate of going now, where I have a thought every 5 minutes. And so thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate all this, and I know you're available in Inc. Authors Group if you want to tag Kathryn. It's Creative Law Center, right?
Correct. Creative Law Center, and creativelawcenter.com. Come and visit me, and you'll get notified when I have the new blog posts on AI and my workshops and things of that sort.
Yeah, and we can tag you in the group to say hello as well. And awesome. Well, thank you all listening to this epic conversation today, for joining us here on Your Daily Writing Habit, where I'm helping you write and finish writing an awesome book. As I just mentioned, drop by my Inc. Authors Group on Facebook to connect with other authors like yourself, as well as resources like Kathryn. Until tomorrow, happy writing.